Hello, Booknerds. Welcome to the Booknerds podcast. I know I've been like incognito for a bit, but I wanted to come back with an awesome session, and we're right back. And an amazing author is with us. Her name is Kayla Logue, and I randomly, on Instagram, I think on Instagram or LinkedIn, I don't know, I was just scrolling through. Perhaps it was Threads of all places, and I went to your profile, and I was like, oh my god, this story sounds intriguing. And I saw the book cover. It's right here as well. It's called Always Squeezing Lemons. And I was immediately intrigued. Am I supposed to kind of, I went in all direction, and I was like, okay, this is something very interesting. So I must, DM her and request her to kind of come on the podcast and talk about the book. And of course, later on, I started my research. That's what I'm paid for. This is not a paid podcast, but we have just the internet has
Yeah.
made this happen. Let's call it that. So I kind of started reading up, and I went through Kayla's profile, and it was just mind-boggling. I was like, how can someone in, I think so, you are just beyond 30, so I was like, I was amazed by what all you have experienced in life. First of all, went on to get your degree in communications, worked for a jiffy in that, and did well at that, and then went on to Pilates. I hope I am pronouncing it right, because I have
Yeah.
nothing to do with
No,
Pilates.
you're
So
saying it correctly.
okay. So she was a Pilates instructor and went on to be the head there, and that's very interesting. A studio like that. Then all of a sudden, in 2020, she kind of took a detour. She was already married then, and she wanted to, explore a life, a different sort of life. And there was several issues there. We'll get into that, but she chose a different path. Got like $1,000 in her, pocket, and drove away on the east coast of the United States, and was working with some social media. They did some social media for some local restaurants, and then eventually in 21, if I'm not wrong, you
Mhm.
went into real estate. And that was very interesting because it was completely unexpected, and is now a very successful real estate, what should I call you, a salesperson, and of course luxury real estate. So that's pretty interesting. I was immediately intrigued. So yeah, and now an author. Started journaling, when she was having trouble with coming to terms with everything that was happening behind the scenes in her personal life. So yeah, I had to take a breath. A lot has happened, and she is a serious author now, and also she is an NGO, head now, owner, whatever you call it. She has started an NGO to help people, develop sustainable habits, and kind of explore their best versions, which is a cliche, but it is very hard to achieve. So yeah,
Yeah.
now I'm done. Okay. Kayla, so tell me first. You have quoted so many books also in your book, so that was very meta. And to get into this book world, uh, I know you wanted to start writing, but there was someone who kind of helped you there. So let's talk about her, and let's start from there, and your journey with journaling. So let's talk about that,
Yeah.
perhaps.
I mean, kind of as you've introduced, I had kind of like a roller coaster of a ride really from, 25 until about 28, I guess, kind of settled. I'm 29 now, so I feel like I'm kind of settling into my ways at this point, to a certain extent. But there's
Also, I was wrong. I was wrong. I was wrong.
No, I
You're
turned
not
30
beyond 30.
soon. But no, so the
Oh,
roller
okay.
coaster
Okay.
ride of the 20s is still continuing. Um, but yeah, no, so it was the summer of 2020 and I was going through divorce. I, left my career. I mean, it was during COVID. I'd say we all kind of have our own crazy COVID stories, and this wasn't because of COVID. It just happened to be the timing of the world and then the timing of my life all, collided into one. And I just knew the route I was going. I loved my job as a Pilates, manager, but I was kind of capped out. I knew I was at the point where I wasn't going to grow anymore. My relationship was not in a healthy place. I was just constantly doing things for other people and not really asking myself the deep questions of what do I want to do? Why am I doing this? And I was really just kind of coasting through life. And, the world stopped. And so it gave me, again, it just weirdly timed that way. So it gave me a little more time though to figure it out and really be intentional with that. So going to the journaling part, my sister, she was a double major in psychology and Spanish. And for a while, she constantly would tell me, you need to start journaling. And I honestly thought it was the stupidest idea ever. I was like, this is a 25-year-old with a long overdue diary. Like, how is that going to help me? I was like, there's just no way. And I was very wrong when I finally gave in to her
Yeah.
persistence. I mean, it was the release and the freedom and like just that like almost like pressure and weight I was holding on to was released. And I was like very honest and vulnerable with the things that was going on in my mind and what I needed to really get out there. And it became a daily practice. And I write about that kind of in my book, how I've always been an athlete my whole life. Physical activity has been a priority, but the processing of, emotional traumas or mental things, like I just pushed it aside. I had that athlete mentality, like, oh, get over it. Just push it aside, like toughen up, rub some dirt on it. And that's not how that works, right? That just causes more dysfunction. So journaling became a huge practice that truly, once I started doing it, doors started opening, clarity started to come through. So that, yeah, between my book and adding the journal prompts in there, but also, starting the nonprofit that is a huge advocate for that as a practical tool for young professionals to really thrive and come into themselves is something I'm extremely passionate about. So journaling kind of definitely started the writing journey for sure.
Yeah. I think so. It's so true for a lot of people. We kind of underestimate the power of journaling, and I know because I just started this year. In fact, I started a reading journal, so it's right here. So I think it helps a lot because you kind of go back to the books that you have read, and there's so much info there, and you can go always go back and kind of learn from that and explore yourself much better. So that is something which is amazing, and that the power of journaling, of course, guys, when you read the book you'll understand how it has helped Kayla, because we can't go in depth into that because for that you'll have to buy the book,
Yeah.
but
There's a lot in
so
there. So there's a lot to unpack, but the
yeah,
journal prompts are really intentional. They're really good prompts. They're ones that, if you have a journal practice, you'll appreciate a really good prompt when it's in front of you. If you don't practice journaling, I think it'll
yeah,
definitely prompt you to start really thinking about it on a deeper level to make it a practice of yours.
yeah, yeah. So tell me something, because this quote from your book was quite hard hitting, and I was like, okay. So it's mentioned here that you cannot have comebacks without setbacks, and you cannot grow without failing. And this has like come up
Mhm.
repeatedly in the book multiple times, I think so. So what does this mean to you? And I mean, it would be an understatement if I would say you have made comeback and slash
Yeah.
S, I would say, because there have been multiple comebacks. But what does it mean to you really? Because you have mentioned it
Yeah, I
multiple
mean, I think
times.
it's something, in any book, to me, like any book that I read, if there's a point that I can kind of take and run with from it, it's a good book. And it's something that really kind of drives the point home. And I think that's a lot of like through the book and the stories and experiences that I share. It's really about kind of overcoming that fear. And when you aren't scared to take setbacks or you aren't scared to fail, right? Growth comes and so do comebacks. Like it's one of those things that when you are, in the other like underlying message is being authentic to your real self and checking your own boxes, not the boxes of society. So when you're focusing on that and you're living true to that, you know, obviously setbacks are going to come and so is failure. But on the other side of that, there will definitely be comebacks and there will definitely be growth. And when you can lean into that and lean into the comfort of being uncomfortable and, allow like overcome fear, like really your greatest potential starts to shine through. So in a long roundabout way, I say that's the easiest, simplest way to put it. But fear is that kind of overcoming portion that is in that entire message throughout the entire book as well.
I think at one point when you go home to your parents, and I was like, she's going to
Yeah.
just chill now. She's not going because after you have kind of gone through such a turmoil, one is like, okay, I can't take it anymore, and most people don't do that, and then kind of there is a spiral, and you go on to perhaps much darker places. But you didn't do that, you just took off again, and that's something I really appreciated, and I appreciate in people as well in general. So kudos. And okay, let's talk about the lemonade. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. It was super interesting. That's how I
Yeah.
gravitated towards the book. And I think so many people who, see this book uh, in bookstores or wherever on Amazon, they will gravitate towards that because that analogy is so consistent in the book and it works, just works. I
Mhm.
didn't think about that while making perhaps some lemonade, but that was
Oh,
amazing.
yeah,
Talk us
no, I
through.
mean, it's really cool when you work with some really smart minds. You have your thoughts, you have your plan and vision for the book, but then, you bring a professional editor in that wants to really integrate and keep your words, but make it more of a flow. And that's where we kind of came up with, like,
Yeah,
for me, like, the title has always been Always Squeezing Lemons. And it's, of course, I love metaphors. I think it's the most incredible way to talk to people and, like, explain really deep concepts in simple terms that are, people that do gravitate on and hold on to and continue to kind of remember. So the portion of, like, always squeezing lemons is like whenever life throws lemons your way, you just keep squeezing them, right? You don't stop squeezing them, you keep squeezing them. But through the process of the book, that is a process of making lemonade from the beginning to the end. And and each chapter I tie into a step of making the lemonade and how it ties to the main concept of that chapter. And that's what ties a lot of, like, different, because as you've read my book, it's pretty much like a 3-year roller coaster ride of a journey. Like, we're here and we're there and we're here and there.
yeah,
And what it does is it pieces it together and it flows of, like, a real true, like, growth experience. Like, I use the term, like, the old me and the new me. So the old me, wasn't
right,
confident, was really kind of like living a life for somebody else. Whereas by the end of the book, the new me is very confident in living a life for myself and authentic. And, so it shows that, healing process, that hurt process, all throughout it. And then that portion of, like, making a tall thirst quenching glass of lemonade ties it together. Yeah, so it makes it more, like, fun, light, and exciting. There's some places in there that, it does, like, even as we were talking prior to the podcast, you're like, dang, this gets a little deep. You got to pull some pieces out. That is it's
it
tough.
is.
So
It is.
yeah.
It is. And you know, I mean, most people go through this. I mean, it's not as if many people go through this, but everybody's kind of intensity is different. So I could totally relate because when I turned entrepreneur and I was like, I thought the life that I was leading was perfect, but it was not. And I was like, oh my God, this is happening with other people as well. When you read these experiences, do you feel that perhaps is there the old me still there who is just kind of dragging the new me back? Do you feel that? Because I sometimes do. I'm like, oh my gosh, you are back.
Yeah.
Damn, get
Yeah,
off,
it's
get off
interesting. And, like, that's such a good way to put it. And I think it's almost like as you grow, there's portions of the old you that come back, but the old you is never really there, right? Like, you find those little tendencies or things, but as you continue to evolve and you do continue to grow and your focus becomes deeper, it's almost like your priorities change, like who you are truly does change, so you don't find yourself constantly, like, held back in that way by any means. But as you grow, new challenges arise. Like, I could probably, even at this point, go back and rewrite my entire book with another whole new perspective, and that's what's really cool. And, like,
right.
that's what I've told people, and a lot of people even that are scared to put their stories out there, they're like, well, like, what if in 5 years, like, I'm a different person? I'm like, well, I hope in 5 years you're a different person. It's like, but that's the reason books close. That's the reason chapters end, right? You've got to share that vulnerability because there are multiple people, especially in a nonfiction book or a memoir or something like that, that are in those same positions that you were, that if you don't share it, they're not going to have something to, like, hook on to. Right. But yeah, no, I definitely, there's times where I'm like, oh, that's an old me tendency, or and it's but I think now it's what's the difference is you're aware of it. During like the real old you're not aware of it.
Yes.
And then now when you kind of come into that new version of yourself, you're bettering yourself, you're growing,
Yeah.
you can recognize it and be like,
Yeah.
okay, do I do this or do I not? And usually when you're
Yeah.
like, you know the
So
consequences at that point. So
I'm like, I'm not naming the person, but I'm not calling you,
yeah.
man. I'm not calling you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Okay. It's not even a man.
Yeah.
It's a lady. I'm not
Yeah.
calling you. Trust me. But anyways,
No.
this is not about me. It's about Kayla.
Hey, no, I
Okay.
love it. It's a book about,
So
helping other people get to that too. So it's perfect.
yes. So I mean, it's so tough. I mean, whenever I think of writing my own book, I'm like, oh my god, can I talk about everything that I've gone through? It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard, and then I don't write it, and that's what I was kind of, it was sort of,
Mhm.
encouraging that one can share the deep and dark details, and you have, talked about your struggles with, alcohol and sex, and you were kind of, just in a different
Mhm.
zone altogether. And you were saying yes to everything. You were a yes person, not saying no. And I was like, oh my gosh,
No
what's
boundaries.
happening here? And yes, no boundaries, and, everything that can go wrong,
Yep.
you know, in somebody's life, but you don't realize it. That's the issue. So tell us about this chapter of your life, because how hard was it to come out of it? Because it's not easy, and kind of to adopt a completely new life and new
Yeah, and I
lifestyle.
think, I mean, truly, I don't think I know just from the experience. It does require like a new level of self awareness. And it does also require you to want to grow, because it's easy to stay in that place or, not make changes if you don't want to. You have to want something greater for yourself. And when you do, and you realize that what you're doing or the way you're acting or your habits aren't in align with that and things aren't changing, then you have to make a change. And then that requires you to really reevaluate your decisions, your choices, your environment, and really take radical responsibility for it. One sentence that I write in the book, and I think it really does tie it all together. I mean, the subtitle of the book is Taking Responsibility to Define Your Own Success. But I think the mindset that really
Yeah,
should be adopted around that is when you realize you can be the cause, problem, and solution for everything in your life, your world changes. And so I think overall, that mindset shift for me and everything that I went through or things that I was experiencing really allowed me to never point the finger. I was like, where am I wrong? And that's where, like, and when you read the book, you can tell those experiences, like, they're not sugar coated, they're real. And a lot of people, it's so cool because now that you put the book out there and people reach out, they're like, we've
mm,
all been through this. You just had the courage to write it down.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and I think
Absolutely,
that's like the big
absolutely.
difference. And, and when people read that, they just feel so seen and heard and understood. And, I mean, there's people that are like well along in their, self development, self growth journey. And, they probably could 100% relate to it. And like would get a lot out of the journal
Yes,
prompts. So people that are really kind of starting and like wanting to tap into their self growth and really start to make real big strides, this book will be incredible for you. And that's even kind of the feedback that I've received in terms of that. But yeah, I mean, really, that's the big mindset that adopts to really kind of start making those changes.
yeah, absolutely. I'm well along, I hope that I was just hoping if I had if I had read this book, like maybe back, uh, like 7 or 8 years back, my journey would have been quicker, because I would have, known that this
Yeah.
happens. Okay. So, but
Right.
of course, I managed, but there are several people who are going through it right now. And there's a quote by Ryan Holiday that you have written in the book, and from
Hmm.
stillness is key. And it says, "Be here, be all of you, be present." And the awareness, and I would say the tenacity to come out of all of this is, I think, so underrated. And perhaps your sports background did help with that, because it requires tenacity for comebacks. So, what about that? And what about your other favorite books? Perhaps,
Yeah.
barring Ryan
Yeah.
Holiday.
I mean, I think with even like that quote, what I really realized and learned even through as COVID kind of shut the world down, right, was really being present and really finding gratitude in the places that I never really looked for it. And gratitude kind of being the foundation for continuing to build upon. And, I always found the silver lining. I never looked at anything in the negative side. I always found it in a way that, I need to control what I can control. And that's, the only energy I need to be really focusing on. And I'm not sitting here saying that there weren't times where I was losing my mind and I was venting and crying, like that
Absolutely.
100% happened.
Your parents were, I think so. Your parents were pretty cool. They're pretty cool, and I think they
Oh
supported
yeah,
you a
no, they
lot
did for sure.
because
Like the support I had was incredible. I just never leaned on them in the way like I expect you to help me, right? It was like I want to do this by myself and I want your help and your
okay,
love and support, but not like well essentially I want your
yeah,
love and support, not really your help, right? Like I want you to be there for me, but I'm not going to
right,
rely on you and I don't want you to worry about me. So that was,
okay,
that was huge having, my family that was ultra supportive. So that's a huge, in general, if on like a self growth journey and development, like having an environment that is supportive, whether if it's family,
yeah.
friends, coworkers, whatever it is, having people around you that's kind of in that same mindset. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, other books. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, other books, of
Yeah,
course.
no,
Yeah,
but
I
I mean,
forgot.
actually,
Yeah,
Stillness is the Key is great. I love that book. In terms of like self development books, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson's incredible. I really like Atomic Habits
yeah,
too, by James Clear. Pretty, simple, straightforward one, in terms of like how well known it is. But I think it's one of those ones, again, kind of as I mentioned, if you can take one concept from a book and it's really impactful and kind of changes like your mindset and the way you operate, it's an incredible book.
yeah.
And then also one I recently read that I've been wanting to read for a long time and I just finally picked it up is The Alchemist. And it's also a very well known book. Love that
Yeah,
book. So those are just, essentially a couple that, I really enjoy and would absolutely, if you haven't read it, I recommend them to everybody. So
absolutely, absolutely. And you also some wonderful choices, by the way, and none of them
yeah.
them can go wrong. Guys, if you want to pick those books up along with Kayla's book, of course, pick it up. It's available on Kindle as well. So at the end of the book, I always plug in like in between, buy the book because until and unless you remind
Yeah,
them, they don't
yeah,
buy.
no, and I
So,
mean, honestly, you should. Again, it's one. It's also with the book. It's a read, but it's also like a practical tool. It's ways for you to apply it too. Yeah,
yeah,
it's all about your own self development.
it has got like exercises at back
Yeah,
of every chapter. So once you are done with the chapter, you just go and kind of write a bit down and kind of
yeah,
marinate
it's a
perhaps.
book and a journal
Uh,
all in one. It's a buy one get one.
yeah, it's that. So it's a good deal. Let's call it that. At the end of the book, you mention about people you want to really cut off from your life. So that was something which was very interesting because you don't really recognize those people. They seem to be on your
Yes.
team, and I'm not talking about anybody in particular in my life,
Yeah.
but just
Yeah.
a disclaimer. But how to kind of figure this out? It's so hard,
Yeah, no, I mean,
right?
it's funny, more metaphors, right? So that chapter is called Know Your Starting Lineup. And, your starting lineup is like the people that love you unconditionally. Like they are your top tier, family, really close friends, significant others. Those are your people that, is your starting lineup. And then, on your team is, those people that are close to you, they're supporting of you, but they're not necessarily super close to you. And then I use the term you're cut, meaning you don't make the team, you're not on the lineup. But and that kind of what you're saying in terms of referencing, I reference the people that, you might think are on your team or maybe even in your starting lineup, but they're the people that, it's kind of one of those things where you have to start listening to your own intuition. Like it's almost like you want them to be on your team and you want them in your starting lineup, but you feel them pulling you down. You feel them holding you back. You feel them, they're
Yeah,
talking bad about you behind your back. And that we have people like
yeah,
that. I would say, I mean, we've all experienced it at one point in our lives. And it becomes one of those things where you just have to again take responsibility for it. And you don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to even address it, but you need to take the steps back to protect yourself. So that's,
yeah,
those are the people that I'm kind of referencing. And again, we're all, interconnected. We all have the intuition to know when those people are holding us back.
Yeah.
So it's just it's
Yeah. How many do you have? How many do you have on
oh
your list? Because I have a
yeah,
long
no,
list
I mean,
now.
again, even through writing this book, I mean, the amount of just the journey alone of writing the book was huge healing and obviously self awareness alone. But I'm very, very, very cautious now about who I let into my like real inner circle. And also I have great boundaries now. I mean, there's still some times where I'm like, this isn't, but significantly better than they used to be.
Yeah.
So I take like an actual effort, like I really do make a conscious effort to one, make sure the environment, the people I'm surrounding myself with, do uplift me and I can be the same for them, not dragging down. And if I feel like I'm being dragged down, I limit that time now. Like I don't invest into it. And I also make the reference, you're the coach. You're the one that makes the decisions. You can bring people on your team. You can bring people on your starting lineup as you choose, just as quick as you can cut them.
Absolutely.
So that's important. And the other even really important part about that is like self-love is self-respect, so when you are the coach and you make those decisions, like that's an act of self-love as well. So
So people, when people see the new you, I mean, I'm sure that the old and new you are there's a huge difference. So what happens? Do they try to reach out? Because that has happened with me as well. Because do they try to reach out in the DMs or perhaps try to call you? And what is your response to that?
it's interesting. I mean, I am the person, like, you don't start a nonprofit, you don't write a book unless you want to help people, right? So I
Truly, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. We are going to talk about the writing process right after this. It's a
It's a lot
lot
of
of
work.
work.
It's way more than you'd ever expect, and I went into it very naively. But no, I mean, again, I always want to help people, and I at this point, like, it's interesting because I feel like there's like two groups. There's people that I used to like associate with that, quite frankly, either they don't want to talk to me because they're not happy in the place that they're at, and I hear these things kind of in the background, or they want to be a part of it. And they either want to support or they want to kind of like latch on. There's still like a little bit of differentiation. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to tell, and then like sometimes it's really obvious to tell. But at the end of the day, like my
Yeah.
intentions are always pure. If somebody wants help and they genuinely need it, I have the resources that between like just going to my website, there's a lot of downloadable resources. I have my newsletter, I have my blogs, like read those, hook on those. I have coaching opportunities, I have my nonprofit, so it's like you can get it. Yeah, and
Buy
buy
the
the
book.
book. That's the first thing I tell
Buy the
people.
book.
Yeah, I'm
Don't
like
talk
I'm
to
like start
me.
with the
Don't talk to
book.
me.
I mean,
Don't
there's
listen.
enough in there. I'm telling you, like it's an entire therapy session. Like it's a whole year of therapy in a book. Okay, so like read the book and then let's
Absolutely.
build off from there. So
Yeah. Let's
yeah,
buy the book first, then
yes,
we'll
for
talk.
sure. No, absolutely. I love that. But it's funny. I do say that too.
I
Like I'm like,
think,
have you read the book yet? If you're not, like that's where we're starting. That's where we're. It all like even the clients I'm working with right now.
yes.
I'm like, have you read my book? And they're like, I
Yes.
haven't. I'm like, start reading it like right now, and then we're gonna keep building. So,
I think so. That's a good way to promote the book. I mean, that has to be done. Anyways, okay. So at one point in the book, and I'm talking as if I have read fiction because it seemed like that. Because when you expect that nothing can go wrong, then Kayla goes on driving her car and runs it off the Volkswagen
Tiguan.
Tiguan or Tiguan, the Tiguan and runs it off the cliff. Nothing much, just a casual, look into the maps or something, and that's it. And then you are like, dazed. And tell us more because it sounds
Yeah.
funny now, but you got yourself
Yeah.
killed almost. So that's something, yeah,
I think,
weird.
and it's so interesting. And that's even like I do write about it. That was like probably one of the hardest chapters for me to write because it was such a like legit like if one little thing went any different, that car would have flipped all the way down the mountain at a mile high at 5,200 feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it was one of those ways of like, how do I word this in a way that I understand now the severity of it? And not like sugarcoating, but not like lightheartedly putting this story out there. But that experience really did make me do a lot more like deep diving on, one, recklessness, and two, like okay, I'm here for a reason. Like, like there's there's
Absolutely.
it just makes
After
you, and
that,
like I think when you are in like the one sentence in that chapter that I think anybody can relate to, even if you haven't had a near death experience, but when you think about death, it does make you like really think about it, right? It does make you think more about life. And it makes you think about like what you're doing on a daily basis, because we are only here in this life right now. No matter what your beliefs are, and I even write this,
yes,
before or after, like you're here right now and you're in your body. Like this is your opportunity to do what you want. So when you really start to kind of think about that opportunity, like the fact that it could end at any second, it does force you to think more about, where you're at. But yeah, no, I think when it happened too, I was just in such a up and down constant roller coaster for 2 years, and then I was like, oh, here's just another thing that happened, like which is, and that was my initial thought. And then as it went on, I was like, okay, we need to we
let's
need to
walk down
slow
the hill.
down. We need to slow down here.
Yes,
Yeah, no, it was crazy,
seriously.
crazy.
But, but because I think so, this was part of a time where you made the transition from a different career altogether. I mean, Pilates and selling real estate. It's like it's it's like two ends of the horizon, and you have managed to do that. So, do you have any pointers for people who are doing that? Trying to perhaps leave a job and kind of get into something a different genre or different job role altogether. For my peeps on
Yeah.
LinkedIn,
Yeah,
they
right?
might
Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm a pro at this point for bouncing around and experiences.
you have lived it.
Yeah.
You have lived it. People just talk about it.
Yeah,
You have
and I
lived it.
mean,
So
it's
that's
so cliche. It really is when I say this, but it's you just have to do it. You just have to start. And like really it is like when you realize like success or happiness and like not and like more so fulfillment, right? Like on your own terms is really one decision away. Like it's a decision that you choose to make or you don't, and you commit to that decision. It's just as simple as that. And like what I always say, if you feel like you're forcing something, or again, if you're stuck in a job that you feel like is a dead end, or you're not happy and you're wanting to make a jump and you don't, you're always going to feel that way until you just do it. And then it's crazy, even no matter how scary it seems or how, obviously uncertain it seems, because it's going to be scary, it's going to be uncertain, it's going to be unknown. But until you just like
yeah,
almost embrace that and jump into that, you're not going to understand what it feels like to be, living in almost like the vibrational frequency of like ease in a sense. Yeah, it's going to be scary. Yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable,
yeah,
but it's also like the route you're supposed to be taking. And doors open, opportunities come that like you don't even you would have never comprehended to be able to happen until you just do it.
yeah.
So I always tell people, I was like, of course, like don't be irrational, but at the same time, like if you're already thinking about it enough, you're already, really wanting to make that leap, do it. Literally just do it. And things start to come into place, as you when you commit to that. And of course it requires like you to show up. Like you can't just do it and then expect things to happen. Like of course it requires consistency and discipline and all those characteristics to make it successful, but at the end of the day it's all about the decisions you make.
I think it was easy for me because I got fired, so it's
Yeah.
easier that ways. Then you can just do whatever you want to. But when you have to really, resign from something, that's where kind of it's
It
tougher.
is.
Perhaps you have been fired as well. You have not left any stone unturned. You have been fired
Yeah,
also,
no, for
right?
sure. It was actually in the middle. I wrote about that too. It was kind of like I was fired earlier. it was only going to be a short time thing. It was down in Fort Myers. Like I don't think they had the funding for it. So it was supposed to be a couple more months. But
Yeah,
then literally the same week I got COVID. So I didn't have anywhere to live. I didn't really have much money. And then I just got fired. I remember calling my mom. This was in 2020. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
wow.
I was almost like kind of like laughing. I was like, of course this would happen. And so then, but it was crazy. Of course, at
Of
that
course.
point I had to find a place to go. One of my friends, like I just stayed in her like whole separate wing of her house. Because she was never really there
Yeah,
anyway. Like she was at work and stuff. So it was okay. And stayed there pretty much like isolated until I was fine. And then I went to a coffee shop, and literally that next day I got offered a job. Talked to a guy that I, had a
wow.
connection with, got offered a job, and then was planning to move to Florida to work in marketing and sales and stuff along those lines. It was a startup company. But then the same week I was moving there, I went to stay with my godfather for a month just to kind of get settled or whatever in North Carolina. And then he offered me the job in real estate to move to North Carolina. So I ended up thinking that was a better opportunity. So I, drove down to Florida, said thanks, but no thanks. And then came back and got all my stuff and then moved to North Carolina. And then I got 4 real estate license. So, and
Oh
it's,
my God.
yeah. So
Oh
it's
my
just,
God.
and that was the best decision I ever made because at that point, I had a lot of financial success. I had a lot of personal success. I made so many connections and network. And I also was really able to like identify my strengths, build a lot of confidence in that. And I mean, even
You got a Rolex.
I did.
You got
I
a
did. Yes,
Rolex.
I was their top sales producer
Yeah.
my first full year, which is like unheard of in that industry. So it was, again, I had a ton of.
You still have
Oh
it?
yeah,
Do you
yeah, yeah,
still have
yeah.
it?
Yeah, for sure. It's a beautiful watch. I love it. But yeah, no, I mean
Okay.
it's really cool again. And I just trusted my gut. I trusted my intuition that this felt right. This felt more, and aligned, even though I didn't know anybody in North Carolina. I knew people down because I'd be staying where I grew up in my hometown and kind of traveling through Florida for the job. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've been around the real estate world, but I didn't never worked in real estate full time. And I had to go back to school for 4 real estate license and get them in like a couple months, which was,
Wow. My Indian friends won't understand this. We just get up one day and start doing real estate. We don't need
oh,
licenses in India.
wow.
So everybody can do
That's
real estate.
crazy.
Anybody. That's crazy. It's just the
That's,
normal here.
yeah, they're going to be
It's
like,
just
that's
normal.
not impressive. Okay.
Anybody can do. So if you're doing real estate in India, nobody takes you seriously
So
then because there is
crazy.
no
Yeah.
accomplishment, right? How would people take you
That's
seriously? You don't have any accolades or any
That's
qualification for that.
so
So it's
funny. And
just
it's
that.
it is crazy though,
You
because I
can,
was thinking about it. Like even like the job that I'm in now and then like continue to build and like my degree was in
yeah,
communications, which, went to school for
yeah,
broadcasting and journalism. So of course that
yeah,
helped a lot with writing the book and, talking and speaking and doing everything else that I'm doing.
yeah.
Um,
Helps.
oh
Helps
yeah.
a
No,
lot.
it was definitely
You are doing a fab job on the podcast because I'm feeling like the
oh no.
guest. You can do it yourself. You can
Hey,
do it
but you
yourself.
saw me on LinkedIn and Instagram. You didn't know I like to talk, so we're good. No kidding. Uh,
The reels are doing well. The reels
Yeah.
are doing well.
But
Congratulations.
no, it's just interesting, like with the real estate stuff, like you go back to school for something and I'm like, okay, like, and it's some mind numbing stuff, like going, cause then it's one of those same things, like unless you're doing it, what you learn is like kind of like more like contract understanding, which is really important, pretty much the most important thing to a certain extent. But a lot of it, I'm like, are you serious? Like what? What? Like I haven't had to write definitions for stuff since I've been like in 8th grade. I'm like, this is absurd.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So went into doing that, and then from there, and I committed to writing the book, starting writing the book, like really going into it at the beginning of last year. Went to a writing workshop out in Texas, and then kind of took it off from that point on. And that was a whole roller coaster ride of a journey in itself.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the writing workshop because most authors, and for the past 7, 8 years, I've been like talking to so many. I've lost count. But many of the authors make this mistake of just diving into writing without any sort of
Yeah,
guidance, and they think that
yeah.
it's easy and anybody can do it. But let's go through that experience that you had with the writing
Yeah, and I
workshop.
mean, me as a person too, and I believe anybody that's really passionate about something, like if you're gonna do it right and get the help to help you do it right. I mean, yeah, nowadays people think, oh, you can just write a book and put it on Amazon, but I mean, if I put the book that I just wrote as a draft on Amazon, like it would not have been good. Like it wouldn't have probably made too much sense. Like you don't realize that, but I mean, you're writing an entire 12, like 150 plus page book. Like, yeah, you need some help. You need more than your eyes reading it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I originally
The grammar has to be
yeah.
on point,
Yeah, I mean, the
first of
amount of
all.
times I had to read
Yes,
through that
totally.
thing, I was like, "Oh god." I was like, "I don't even know. My eyes are like fried." And then fortunately, my assistant that
Yeah.
I had hired at the earlier the part of this year, she was also like went to school for editing, so she helped me like re-look over it. handful of times.
Okay.
But no, so I committed to writing it, and I spoke to a hybrid publishing company the beginning of the year
Yeah.
and well, the end of the year of 2022, and so that's when I signed on
Yeah.
to be with them and go to their writing workshop, which was in Austin for 3 days, and that completely changed the course of the direction of my book. Because if you're obviously you're in the room, there was only 25 other authors that were aspiring to write their books, and there were multiple editors. Of course, it was so I learned so much. Like I went to that writing workshop, I did all the drills and the exercises before, and I came in there. I was like, I got my book. This is exactly what it's going to be. I'm so excited. And at the end of those 3 days, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So, it was like it completely changed. It
It's
changed the course of
hardcore.
my book, and also it made it a lot more raw and real and authentic because that was the message that needed to come out. But then I started writing my book, my draft or whatever, and then like midway through it was Scribe, and then they pretty much like diminished or dissolved or whatever in the middle of that summer, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know what to do. But fortunately, I made some really good connections at that workshop. So I met my editor there. I met a mentor there. So I was able to really build off of that. Even though I didn't end up publishing with them, I used those connections and resources to help kind of build it out from there. And I mean, getting the first draft out, like quite frankly, I'd say that was probably the easiest part. The editing was insane because it makes you like, you think you're clear and then you're like, wait, what? Oh gosh, like glad that's not what I wrote. It's so interesting how it evolves and pieces together, and how, you pick the clarity too. And I even have like a free like resource for writers on my website. It's called like Clarity in Your Writing. It's a freebie, like pretty downloadable, that
Yeah.
I wish I honestly had when I first started writing, because it would have helped me really identify my like one sentence, one liner, what's the message I want to get across. But that took me almost like towards the draft, like the final end of my draft, to come back and really pull it out. So it was a warp of an experience. And then once you get it edited and then you go to decide how you're going to publish it, and then marketing it, and then making people even care about reading it, and then like figuring out how to get it on all these platforms and marketing, I'm like, God, like I remember getting it in the mail and
A
being
lot.
like, oh, this is cool, now I have to sell it. Like and I sell
Look,
land for a living. I'm
there was
like,
a post.
and now I'm like, this is intimidating. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It's just such an
Yeah.
interesting journey. And they say like writing a book is a roller coaster up and down. And it so is.
And I was reading a post on LinkedIn yesterday, and I think so the writer kind of broke it down beautifully. Like writing a book is 20-25% and then of course editing another 25, and then
Mm-hmm.
50% is selling, something like that. So it's just nerve wracking, to be honest. Okay, what about the future? I know you had quite an experience writing the first book, but do you plan on taking this series further, because it has
Mm-hmm.
so much potential? I see it, because this lemons thing, it can be all yours, and kind of, I
Yeah.
see it, happening. Perhaps, what's your thought
I'm
about
definitely
that?
gonna write more books for sure.
Okay.
So what it's gonna be exactly, I have some ideas. I mean, I have an idea for like 5 different books I want to write. So it's kind of like
Okay.
allowing that, and it's so interesting because I do agree. Like the lemon theme, like even my newsletters, like the lemon drop, and it goes so well, and it's
It's called lemon
the
drop.
lemon
It's called lemon
yeah, the
drop.
lemon
That's
drop
interesting.
newsletter, I do it every single week, and it's about like really like personal development with practical tools. There's different topic I write about each week.
Okay.
So for like subscribers, they get that in their inbox. I'm Yeah, so and I'm
Wonderful.
like building other
Wonderful.
like brand stuff along outside of that. I'm working on obviously like different like coaching opportunities and have some clients now. So, but yeah, no, I definitely will write more books, and I'm excited because the direction that I want to continue to go. The next book, I have a really good idea of what I want it to be about. It'll be different than this one. But a lot around like the confidence aspect. It'll pull a lot from there in a certain, but not really the experiences. I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to like jinx it. But
No, no.
it's gonna be
Don't talk
more like
about it. Don't talk
research backed as well, and also kind of include some interviews is kind of the plan of like other people and their perspectives. So
about
kind of tying a bit more together. It's interesting though, now that I've like gotten this one out there, and I'm still like working on getting it into the hands of many readers, and putting the messaging out there and building out other stuff. I don't want to get into that. Like I feel like my creative side, I have it. My idea is to start writing again in the fall. So that's kind of my plan, taking a little bit of like a little breather here.
Right. But it must be hectic because you are in sales, and all of us know how hectic does it get. And with land and selling property, it gets quite hectic. So how do you kind of create the
Whew.
compartments?
I work on mastering that every day. No kidding.
Is it 5 days for you? Is it 5 days for you? Do you travel much with it, or
Yeah,
what's
I mean
happening
it's pretty much 24/7. The summers are really busy for us. So I'm based in Charlotte area, North Carolina, and we have property in the North
there?
Carolina mountains and then Tennessee lakes. We also have properties in West Virginia, and then there's some in Oklahoma. So whenever I'm going to property, I'm traveling there. But like our main office for, talking to leads and talking to people is here. So each week kind of depends. It's such a different style of real estate than like your normal general real estate. Um, but yeah, so we
Yeah,
travel a lot for that. So between like, I mean, I wrote my entire book between the hours of 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. Like that was when I wrote my book. So like there wasn't much other
wow,
time to do it. So I feel like for a
nice.
whole year and a half, like it was just such chaos, like getting it out there and doing it, and it was amazing. Like, huh?
Voice notes? Do Do you use voice notes while traveling, or scribbling while traveling?
So
Do you do
I
that?
just honestly talk into my phone. So yeah,
Perfect. I would say
Yeah,
that's
no, it was
perfect. Yeah.
honestly like the amount of notes I took, like I have a note in my iPhone that is miles long. And so the amount of notes I took while driving and like thoughts that would come to my mind, I would like randomly start talking into my phone because it would like I'd be listening to like, a podcast or like a song or whatever, and I'm just thinking about something, and I would be like stuck on a chapter or like where do I want this to go? And then all of a sudden it was like boom, clarity. So I would say in a really weird way, last year
Yes.
I had a ton of driving that I did, and there was a
Yeah.
lot it just was that time of like there's nothing else you can do besides stare at the road and think, so
Right.
um
Right. I think notes. I think Apple Notes is
for sure.
underrated for writers.
100%.
I think it can be used as an amazing tool, and I also use it now. So perhaps I'll beat you to the second book. Let's see. Let's see if
Yeah.
that happens. But I hope. I
So
hope.
funny.
But you have so much of your process. It seems is so on point. So it's hard to do that. I think so. But
Yeah.
I'll try.
Yeah,
So
so funny.
cool, cool. Okay, perfect. I think so. We have covered most of the things I wanted to talk about, at least for the first book, and I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to the second one, guys. This is the first one, and it's called "Always Squeezing Lemons."
Got the hard copy too.
Okay, Kayla has a hard copy. I'm so sad we don't have a hard copy in
I
India,
know
but
it's like the cover is so bright, like the screen. Oh my gosh, I'm turning it the wrong direction.
it
Yeah,
is.
it's so
It
bright and
is.
like I will say I've gotten a ton of comments on just the cover. And they're like, "Did you design
It's
it?" I was
amazing.
like, "Well, I didn't do the whole design, no." But I was very particular in the
Yes.
fact that I wanted it to be simple. I wanted it to be because there's like no way to capture everything that I write about in a
Yeah.
title. It would be a cluster and exhausting. So
Yeah.
this like the simplicity of it, the cleanness of it, I love it. So
Please get it to India. And have you traveled to India ever
I have
before,
not,
or
but honestly, I
you
love
do?
traveling, and that's kind of in the next like 5 years. I want to do a ton of
Yes,
traveling.
yes.
So definitely on my list for sure.
India it
Yeah,
has to be. It
I'll
it's
come do a
just
book signing. I'll bring a
it's
bunch of
just
books.
absolutely. It should be a book tour. It should be a
Yeah,
book tour
yeah.
along
No,
with
I that's totally in the plans. Totally in the plans.
Bombay, Delhi, Goa.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
That's it.
When I
Yeah.
start planning it, I'll be
So
reaching out and
that's
be
about
like,
it.
"Okay, so here's what I'm thinking."
Perfect, perfect. Do hit me up when you are doing that, and I'll make it happen. Anyways, so thank you so much, Kayla. It has been such a fun podcast. You have dropped so many truth bombs
Love
in
it.
there, and so much of content in the book as well. We have covered a little bit, but we can't cover the entire thing because you need to buy the book on Kindle for now, until Kayla comes in for
Yes.
the book signing uh,
Exactly.
very soon. Yeah, so yeah, we hope that that happens, and we would love to meet you in person, and super happy that you acknowledged us in Instagram DMs, and and came on the podcast. An honor to have you here, and yeah, really inspired, really inspired. Even now, after kind of 10 years in transformation, I would say that I've been through a lot as well myself. But even now, it is helpful. The book was helpful, and will be to many others who are going through tumultuous
Yeah.
times. Perhaps right now, and yeah, look forward to so much more. Thank you so much for writing this, putting this out
Yeah,
in
thank
the
you so
world.
much for having me. It was an absolute blast. And I mean, of course, like I know you'll probably have the links, but most of my stuff that you can find is on just kaylalogue.com. So if you go to my website, that's where just about all the things
Perfect.
are. So,
Perfect. Yeah, yeah. Do check out the website. She's also on Instagram. What's your Instagram
yep,
handle? Same
Kayla
name, right?
Logue with just an
Same.
underscore at the end. So, yep.
Perfect, perfect. Do that. And of course, when the podcast launches on our website, podcast.booknerds.in, and on YouTube at Booknerds, you can always check it out. Tell us in the comments what did you like about the podcast. Read the book before that because it will take some time, perhaps a week. So yeah, so do that and let us know on
Yes.
Amazon as well.
Please.
The
Love
reviews
that.
are
Yes,
important.
that'd be
Yeah,
amazing. So, awesome.
cool.
Thank you for
Thank you so
having
much
me.
and happy. Yeah, happy reading. Happy reading.